So yeah, like before I get into the topic, I'm gonna sort of share my sort of personal story. So it's a bit interesting and it's also quite relevant to support driven. So when I actually applied for this talk, I was still in my previous position, and then certain sort of positive developments happened, and now I'm the founder of Qualitista full time. And I actually owe quite a bit to support driven, because last year at this event was where I found my first users for the company, which helped me sort of make it my full-time thing. So I don't know how many companies have been started because of support driven, but Qualitista definitely counts as one. So thank you guys. And maybe I'll just sort of give you like a little bit of background on myself first, and then I will jump into the topic of the day. So I have like an eclectic background in public relations, marketing, general management, like from various, mostly Estonian companies, and then for the past 6 or 7 years in tech. And the most relevant thing to this is me like scaling customer support at a company called Pipedrive. So how many of you know Pipedrive? A few. Okay, so it's basically a CRM. So like think HubSpot and ProsperWorks, and it's like fairly established. So we went from I think 5 people to 70 people, servicing about 75,000 companies across most of the world. Did it in 3 locations, 2 languages. So like that's my sort of relevant experience, like why I'm actually here, or why I got involved with support driven. And obviously there's Qualitista, which I will sort of briefly tell you what that is about. And last but not least, that's Haiku. There's a bit of a discrepancy there because like I'm more of a dog person. My co-founder is like likes cats. And we founded Qualitista before I got Haiku. So now it's like I try to sort of not wear company swag in her presence. But like the problem that Qualitista solves is basically this. So Timo is the founder CEO of Pipedrive, and I got pretty early on, I got pretty anxious about getting those emails, basically. And these are all real emails that he sent me like throughout the years, and it was always like when I got something like that, that meant like it's too late, we messed up somewhere, there's something really wrong with like what we sort of said or did, and like it's frustrating to get that email because you know that this is already too late, you're now like you have already failed basically. So I got to thinking like what is like it kind of ties into like this topic of CSAT and like whether it's the best measure for quality. And like our answer was the same as many others, that like we need to sort of set our own bar, we need to sort of do our own, sort of give our own feedback, and basically that's what Qualitista does. It's a system for giving feedback to your peers and colleagues in an efficient manner, because like obviously if you have a big team, then you don't want to open 60 tabs with various tickets and sort of slack people like you did good here. So that's what we do, that's what the software is about. Integrates with Zendesk. Here's one slide of what the interface is going to look like after the redesign. But coming to the actual topic of today, so how to enable support teams and especially young and ambitious people on your teams while also getting the job done. So like that goes back to my previous job where we ended up with quite a mix of people that had been around for anywhere between 1 week to 5 years. So if you are dealing with that kind of a team, then quite it is pretty much guaranteed that you will need to find ways to motivate the old timers in different ways than the guy that started yesterday. So like very different things will matter to those people. So over the years we tried various things, and we were also dealing with like various cultures, like different personal backgrounds, like all the sort of possible sort of factors of like being different were there in that sense in the team, and it was quite a challenge. And like the fact that we were hiring for the kind of profile that we were hiring for, and I'm sure that most of you are probably in similar teams where people are really driven and ambitious, and you at least try to find those kinds of people, then the problem with that is that exactly that they are driven and ambitious. So if you don't sort of give them stuff that is challenging, or they just get more of the same, then pretty quickly you will end up in a situation where they're like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, give me something new. Like, this is repetitive. I want to learn. All those things. So I'm going to share a couple of ways that we have dealt with that, and not all of them are universal. Not all of them, in fact, were successful at first. But just basically food for thought. You can sort of find your own ways to implement these ideas, and yeah, like basically, it's going to be in my sort of experience distilled from the course of 4 years and 70 people, 7 teams, 3 locations. First of all, in order to sort of start dealing with this situation, you need to understand that it's a fact that like being an agent, like, it's not forever. It's like, at least for the vast majority of people, it's not something that they will sort of come to do forever. So in order to start sort of dealing with it appropriately, I think you need to sort of accept the fact that, like, this is something that will be temporary. Like, whether it's a year or it's 5 years, like, that's a question, but I don't think being an agent for most people is a career for life. Like, support in general, yes, but like specifically being the frontline agent, I think, I know that some people will probably disagree, but in my mind, like, that's probably not a career for life. So there is an analogy towards the end of the presentation that I think is good for this, but like, that is my sort of premise where I'm coming from. So one thing that I think is important in sort of empowering your people and sort of giving them tools for becoming better, and like through that also sort of motivating them, is tied to this. So take a guess, or like, what is your answer? Like A, B, or C. What are most of your sort of support cases like? So I would say that, like, the answer there is B. Like, most of your cases are, they're not, one or the other. They're not terrible. They're not absolutely amazing. They're just okay. Now, if you think about it, then like, that is obvious to you, but it's not obvious to the people that started just like a few months ago, and it is also not necessarily obvious to the people that have not received lots of feedback. So this goes to the feedback point that I think is really important to validate behavior that you also think is just fine, continue. And I noticed that the motivation of the team really started getting better once we sort of doubled down on this whole idea of like proper systematic feedback, where we also we didn't sort of seek out the sort of extremes, but we also said, like, this middle part here, this 95%, like, this also is okay. Like, you should continue doing this. Like, that's not like, we're not going to give you a medal for this, but it's fine, continue. So like, having this kind of validation in your feedback process, I think, is very important and goes a long way in motivating the guys. Another way to sort of do this is to sort of focus on mentoring. So there's obvious benefits to like being the person that is getting mentored, but there's a side benefit which is related to, and this goes to, speaks more towards how to motivate the old timers. if you're the person that is assigned to be the mentor, then all of a sudden you're also being put on the spot to be the authority. And as you know, this is a very stressful job, and not all the agents have like great self-confidence, because if you are constantly in an environment where people are telling you that like you're horrible, like listen, you get like bad customers, for example. So like getting assigned to be a mentor, like that actually, I have seen that do great things for people's self-esteem. And it's the easiest thing in the world. You just go up to the person and say like, hey, we have this new hire here, like can you be the go-to person? And all of a sudden, like they are being told that like, hey, your sort of expert knowledge matters, and I believe that you can teach this new person something that is valuable. And again, super easy to do. So yeah, assign mentors. And the other thing that we noticed when we started doing this on like a systematic basis was that it worked better, because quite often the sort of team lead or the trainer, like they are swamped. They usually, like unless you're a massive team with infinite resources, then chances are that these people will be swamped. However, if you're assigning somebody that is just a regular agent to be the mentor, like they will take this very seriously. Like if they don't get a lot of responsibility otherwise, then like they will usually latch onto it, and they will take it very seriously. They will go out of the way to really sort of teach the people that they're supposed to be the mentor to. So there's that, and then there's this. We recognize this movie. Yeah. We actually there was a moment where we seriously considered assigning this to be the title of one of the guys on the team, Mr. Wolf, because he was just like an absolute expert in taking the most messed up situations and then sort of having the customer come back and say like I like just take my money. So like that's like one area of superpowers, but going beyond like this sort of just answer the customers, and sort of trying to determine whether the people on your team, like they have some sort of an inclination. Like very often it will be something that's related to like technical knowledge. For example, like people that come into support, tech support especially, like it's sometimes they're looking for a way into sort of the tech world, and they sometimes they have technical skills. It doesn't have to be that. There's a bunch of different sort of directions you can take this in. So for example, customer success, quite obvious. Sales, also marketing, like all those things are ones that and at least like in a typical tech company, you can find ways for your support people to focus on those powers or those interests. So like whether it's assigning some sort of specific customer success related cases to these people, or more technical cases, like that's one way of doing it, to sort of really give them something to chew on, like some sort of a focus, some sort of a topic, not just like number of cases to be solved. Another way of doing it is to, if you work for a larger organization, like one way of doing it would be to like assign them to be the point person for communicating with the marketing department, because like again, pretty typical that marketing will have lots to do with support. They will have like stuff that they sort of release to the public, and support needs to be aware of like what is being said. Like same goes for product management. Like if it's like a more technical person that might be interested in product management, then that's your answer. Maybe they're the person to sort of convey messages between support and product management. So there's lots of ways that you can sort of enable people to sort of develop in the areas that they are interested in, and even if you don't sort of, if it doesn't end in them sort of becoming the product manager for the company, then even just by saying that, like, hey, like, what are your interests? Like, is there anything that you would like to sort of do more of? Just the fact that you were interested in that, like, sends a strong message that, like, you care, and just by getting that message, you will sort of make the situation better for that person. They feel like, oh, okay, I'm being appreciated. They notice that I probably have some sort of natural interest, and I'm not just like a backlog killing machine, and like, that's a good feeling. And here's another one that is very easy to do. So I'm assuming here, and that's not necessarily the case, that many of you are heads of customer support or team leads. How many of you are agents? Quite a few agents. So like, this is something for you guys to sort of, that you can sort of easily do for yourself, and your team lead will appreciate it if you sort of just go up to them and say, like, hey, can I take this from you? Like, can I do this? Like free up some of your time. And this is from like a team manager standpoint, that's a pretty safe thing to do, because chances are that, like, whatever sort of responsibilities you have, giving one single item away, like preparing for some sort of a meeting, or distributing some sort of a memo that you do regularly, or like whatever it might be, giving some task to an agent, it goes a long way, because again, this is saying, like, it's similar to the mentoring thing, in the sense that you're sending a message that, like, I trust you, like, I know that you are absolutely capable of doing this, and by sort of assigning you this task, I think you will do a good job, and it will be good for the team. So yeah, and like, obviously at some point, if your organization is growing, you will have to give those things away anyway. So there's a reference here to a great article. So if you just Google what's written here, then you will find the article. Like any company, like especially tech companies that are growing fast, you are bound to end up in situations where you need to sort of like rise to the next level, which also involves giving away your current job or your current task. And I went through that. So when I first started, I was more of like a team lead. I had individual contributors in my team. But then, like, as the organization grew, I ended with managing managers, and that's a very different job. So that sort of happened like this, because we had to sort of form teams, and that was a very sort of sharp sort of turn. But like, for many people, it doesn't happen like that. Then you need to do it anyway. So, and here's the analogy. So I think support is kind of like college. I think it's natural that sort of people do not stay there, or at least in the agent role, forever. It's more about how long is the stay and what the stay is like. Like, what will your sort of alumni take away? And that's actually, like, one of my proudest moments was like when I realized that so many of the people that joined the support in Pipedrive actually ended up in other departments of the company, and they were better off for having come from support. And in many cases, they wouldn't have even sort of ended up in those jobs, because like, being from support actually makes you a very attractive candidate internally, because it means you're empathetic, you know the product, and you know the customers. So yeah, that's the main thing. Thanks for listening. And as for Qualitista, we are in the process, I guess, where you could say that we're in closed beta. So if anybody's interested, come up to me, and like, we can sort of discuss more about that thing. Other than that, you can find me on Support Driven, you can find me on Twitter, and those are my contacts. So thank you.